everyone, I'm Tony Lontis and this is the Everyday Business Show.
I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, because if I fail, that means I fail for my entire female nation, I call it.
Is that possible? That was the question for myself. And it is absolutely possible.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Everyday Business. I'm your host, Tony Lontis, and today we have yet another amazing guest to talk to and chat with on the Everyday Business Show. Now, just a quick reminder that if you're listening to this live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, we have the information regarding this show below where you're watching it. And just remember, if you're watching it on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions, email us on info@TonyLontis. You can find replays of this live show on Binge Networks TV USA and the Tony TV channel app, available on all LG, Roku, and Samsung TVs across the planet. Now, in recent years in Australia, the government and departments and agencies have made a concerted effort to put protocols in place that recognise and pay respect to the original inhabitants of Australia. And so, starting in 2022, I actually want to pay my own respect to the original inhabitants and Indigenous peoples of Australia. And therefore, I want to respectfully acknowledge the people of the Yugambeh language region, which is in the Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and I pay my respect to the elders past and present, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and peoples listening here today. Now, our wonderful guest today is the gorgeous Mike Malatesta, and I hope I haven't messed up his surname. That's very important. And our interview today is called How Did It Happen? Now, what you need to know about Mike is that he loves supporting and helping entrepreneurs to bring their dreams to fruition, break through barriers, and achieve massive success. He's lived in their shoes since he was 26, and he's been through it all and is still on the entrepreneurial roller coaster that we are all on. He has experienced the excitement, the pain, the grit, the mistakes that come with each and every entrepreneurial journey, and I'm no different. Mike is an entrepreneur who's helped start, grow, and sell two amazingly successful waste management companies. One he sold for mid 8 figures and the other sold for a low 9 figure. Mike knows how hard it is to be an entrepreneur and what a long shot it can be to achieve the success and freedom that is the entrepreneurial goal for all of us. He also knows what it takes to get there. Mike is a servant and selfish leader with a proven talent for developing an exciting vision and mission initiatives, building the teamwork and talent and systems necessary to realize those initiatives and execute them with a team to deliver desired results. Mike is also the host of a podcast called How Did It Happen?, where he explores the stories and lessons and wins from some of the most fascinating and successful people in the world. He has a new book called Ownership: How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. It's a philosophical memoir that reveals the secret to why so many entrepreneurs get stuck and how they shift to get free once again. It tells the story of how Mike found himself in the valley of uncertainty, a place where many entrepreneurs end up stuck, confused and feeling sorry for themselves, which he did. It was a place Mike wasn't looking for that showed up and put him on it was a person rather that showed up and put him on a path that eventually led him out of this valley and into a future that he owned and made himself. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Tony, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for that great introduction as well. It made me feel like I'm way more important than I am. But thank you for having me on.
Mike, everyone is important. You know, as humans, we're really unique, and it's that uniqueness that makes each and every one important. And it's part of the reason why I do my show, and I'm sure it's part of the reason why you do your show, is that we're all connected by those stories. And something Mike will say can only be heard by the people that follow Mike or are in need of your wisdom and knowledge. And I'm really privileged to have you on the show today. Let's start at the beginning. Tell me about childhood and growing up.
Sure. Well, I had a great childhood. I had a really good family. My parents were hardworking middle class people. I grew up in Pennsylvania here in the United States, and I've got two sisters, one older, one younger, and it was just just really like a
Lovely.
normal childhood, I think. And yeah, so I had a great experience as a kid.
Mike, did you have any ideas of going into business as a young person? How did that happen for you? How did that transform, and how did you get into waste management in the first place?
Yeah, so Tony, when I was 4 years old, my parents lived across the street. We lived across the street from a construction company, and in the afternoons in the summers, I would sit on the curb outside of our house, and I would watch the guys bring their trucks and their big heavy equipment back to the yard, and just I just loved everything about it, the noise and the smoke and the smell of diesel fuel, and just the guys. I thought they were just so cool. And I think that an entrepreneurial seed was planted inside of me when I was sitting on that curb when I was 4 years old. But for a long time, I didn't do anything about it because my life just went in the direction my life was going. I went to school, and then I went to college, and in college, at the time, no one was. Entrepreneur wasn't a word that anybody even used, and being a business owner was not something that any of my friends or fraternity brothers were talking about or interested in. Everybody was, I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be a doctor, or I want to be something else. And I just, I continued to love trucks, but I just thought I have to get out of here and get a job. And so that's what I did. And it wasn't until years later when the opportunity sort of collided with this seed that had been planted in me when I was 4, that together would give me, would start the entrepreneurial journey.
Wow. So I think that perhaps the idea of being an entrepreneur is growing and is becoming an option for more and more people, because I'm a bit like you, Mike. I never, for me, as a woman, growing up in the 80s, there were not many options. It was nursing, teaching, or a bank job. And the thought of doing anything else never entered my head. Do you think that's changing for young people today?
Oh, for sure. First of all, just the whole, just being an entrepreneur and entrepreneurism is almost romanticized now. It's taught in university. It's talked about all the time. Entrepreneurs are celebrated in a lot of arenas, in the press and other places. For example, podcasts are all over the place about, with entrepreneurs like me and you and
Mm.
so many others. So I think there's just the exposure to it is so great now. And along with the exposure, the opportunities for collaboration, the opportunities for funding, and the opportunities that computers have brought for businesses that weren't possible, before the internet. It's just
Yes.
exploded, I think, opportunities for people to become entrepreneurs in a way that they never ever in the history of humankind could have uh, could have done. So yes, tremendous explosion in the opportunities available to people, and not just young people, any person.
Yeah, yeah. Mike, let's talk about your business in waste management. And can you
Oh,
describe for the audience what it is that your businesses did?
yeah, I sure can. So what we focused on was helping manufacturers solve what we call complex waste problems. So,
Ah,
most people are familiar with the trash, and I don't
yes,
know what trash is called in Australia, but so we didn't do any trash. We went into factories
yes.
and we would help them with wastewater, sludge, hazardous waste, cleaning tanks, cleaning machines, all
Ah,
things that related to production. And so we had a little niche like that, and that
yes.
we started as a trucking company doing that, and then it grew over the years, Tony, to processing plants where we would process wastewater and other types of waste for our clients, and then we grew geographically.
Mm,
Once we understood how to do things, and that's when the business started to scale up after we
yeah,
were able to use what we had learned and then grow into different states.
yeah. Mike, obviously you're very successful in that niche, but can you tell me what it took to grow and scale and the time frame around that? Because in this era, there's often uh, the idea that success can come quickly, and whilst it can come quickly, for the majority of us, it's a long, slow haul, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it sure is. So yeah, in my book, I say that the stories that get told are, pizza and Red Bull one night, one week, and then a billion
Yes.
dollar valuation the next. And while like you said, that can happen,
Yeah.
it is so exceptionally rare that if you
Hmm.
set out with that as a goal, you will almost certainly be disappointed in your progress. So for us, I think our story is a lot more normal, right? It took us, uh, we started from nothing,
Yes.
and I would say that until we were, 5 or 6 years down the road, it was still kind of touch and go, and then when we were 10 or 12 years down the road, it was kind of like, okay, we're doing well. Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
And then it was the last 10 years before we sold that business where I really, me and the team really started to figure out, how do we accelerate the
Hmm.
growth of this company? How do we move from being, still operating in sort of a startup mode to really maximizing the capability and the potential that we have? So it was a very long, it was a long road.
A
Some
long
have longer roads, but it
overnight
was a long
success.
road. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a 22-year overnight success. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mike, can you think back to when you were in those first 5 years and describe some of the feelings and the challenges in that first 5 years?
Yeah, I can. So that's a stage that I call a dream stage in the
Mm.
entrepreneurial journey. And so those first 5 years, while it was, everyone's familiar with, well, you have to wear all kinds of hats and you have to do all
Yes.
the work. But the
Yes.
thing that, the thing that I remember most about the first 5 years, Tony, was that I loved everything I was doing. And it
Mm.
didn't matter to me how much time I spent or how much time I needed to spend to do it, because in that dream stage, I was getting energy from almost everything I was doing. One,
Yeah.
because
You
everything
loved
was
it.
new. And yeah, it was just like, hey, we're actually doing this, we're
Yeah.
making this work. So in that stage, I just thrived off of, everything that needed to be done. I thrived off the amount of time it took. I thrived off of the energy I got. I thrived off of solving a problem. I thrived off of being useful. I
Yeah.
thrived off of everything.
Yeah.
Uh,
And Mike,
and
do
then it
you,
changes.
yeah, I was just going to say, and then tell me
Yeah.
about the change. Then what happens?
Well, the second phase that is the grind phase, and you know, I, what occurred to me, or what didn't occur to me, is that I needed to evolve
Yeah.
myself as a
Yeah.
leader and as a business person, as the business did. And what ended up happening, Tony, is I got, 10 or so years down the road, and I was still doing everything the same way that I was doing it when I was a
Ah.
startup, what I just explained to you. And
Yes.
um, what it, and I wasn't liking it anymore. In fact, the things that used to give me all kinds of energy, were frustrating me. I mean, they were just,
Ah.
I didn't understand why, people weren't stepping up and taking care of things, and why
Yep.
I,
Yep.
was still having to deal with all of these things.
Yep.
And when my partner, um, my partner Butch passed away in a fire at one of our plants, when we were 11 years in, or just about 11
Oh,
years in.
Mike.
And yeah, that just, when that happened, the weight of that and all this
Yes.
frustration, all these things that I was feeling, dropped me, into this place I call the valley of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And because I just didn't, at that point, I didn't know what to do. I only knew what I had been doing. And um, I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But I didn't
Yes.
know what my options were, Tony. So that's what happened to me. For I was still treating the business like it was a startup, like it was a little baby that needed my attention
Ah.
24/7 for all of
Uh-huh.
its needs. And because that's what it needed at the beginning, but it didn't need that now. And I wasn't uh, um, I didn't realize it, and I didn't realize that I had to change. And instead, you know I just I just kept doing what I thought was right, and it was not a great, decision. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Um, and
I
then they
was,
get to a point where they're stuck and confused, and or they want to quit, they want to turn back, or they want to blame someone, or they
mm,
want someone to, like I say, I wanted someone to reach down into that valley and drag me up out of there, and dust me off and tell me everything was going to be okay, and tell
yeah.
me what I
Yeah.
needed to do. Have
I
you
was
felt
just
that
going to
way?
say, Mike, no one tells you about the process that sits behind business and entrepreneurship, and that's that process of you have to grow into the person that leads the business to the next phase. And you can't, I think they're inherently linked. That growth of person, self, and soul is, for me, the greater story behind entrepreneurship. And we don't talk about it that often. It is that we all have those dreams at the beginning of the journey, but no one talks about the fact that you have to grow along the way. Because if you don't grow, then your business will get to a certain point. It takes your growth to get the business to the next point, and you're in control of that. And we don't talk about that enough, do we, Mike?
You are so right. Because when I it took when I so I'm in this valley of uncertainty, and
Mm.
I'm still, on the outside. I mean, I'm still showing up
Yeah.
for work, and I'm still
Yes.
going through the motions, right? This is all inside stuff.
Yes.
But the the thing that changed things for me, Tony, was when I finally realized that even though I didn't like where I was, it was I was there because that's exactly how I designed my life to put me. I
Yeah.
designed the systems in my company to put me in this valley. And on one hand that was a little depressing,
Yeah.
but on the other hand it was encouraging because I said to myself, well, if I was able to design a system so perfectly that it ended me up here,
Mm-hmm.
I can surely design a different system that works perfectly to get me to
Give you
another
freedom.
place where I want to
Mm.
be. And that's what I started working on. Yeah, that's when I made that realization, and then a lot of other things. That's where I
Yeah.
was able to sort of get through stage 3, which is the break stage where I was in the valley, and then start looking ahead for breakthroughs again, because the grind will really, if you let it, it'll really
Yes.
take away your future. It'll
Yeah.
convince you that you don't have a big future out
Yeah.
there. And my goal is to convince people that there is still a big future, and here's what happened to me, and that can happen to you.
Yeah.
um,
And to
yeah,
the world, of course, you've got a wonderful, thriving business. You looked quite
yeah,
successful, but
right,
you'd reached that standstill, and the only way out is up, essentially, isn't it? And sometimes, and I'm very passionate about this point, sometimes it's the quiet words of someone that you've just met, someone in passing, someone at a networking event. It's those quiet words. Sometimes it's just a sentence, sometimes it's a longer conversation, that something clicks in your brain and you go, ah, and it starts your
yeah,
brain thinking along a different train of thought, and you go, ah, what if? Because my as human beings, we're incredibly creative, and our brains are amazing machines at solving problems and working out different ways and creating things from nothing and creating something new. And I'm kind of understanding from that valley of uncertainty that you were in, it was just a chance conversation, or someone that showed up and said, hey Mike, la da 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 da, have you thought about? Or someone recognizing that
yeah,
you're in that place and offering you help and assistance.
yeah. There was a couple of things, Tony. So
Yeah.
you're so right. Where your eyes and ears only see what your brain's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea what my brain was looking for, but I was looking for a savior. And
Yes. Get me
uh
out of here.
yeah. And I I I found my first one. I call him my messenger in the book,
Yeah.
because I was at a networking event, local
Mm-hmm.
chamber of commerce networking event, and this restaurateur was there. He was the keynote
Yes.
speaker, and Johnny V started talking about his, career and, his business and all of that. But then he started talking about, these challenges that he was facing. And he
Mm.
told us about this program that he was in called Strategic Coach that helped him, uh, make the breakthroughs, right? To grow his business and to get more time off and these other things that were just so foreign to me. But when he said that, I thought I was the only person in the room, that he was speaking directly to me.
Yeah.
So it's so funny you brought that up. And yeah, that was the first thing where I was like, okay, this is an action that I need to take. And I joined that program because of what he said
Yeah.
um, at that event. And that program started a bunch of other things that happened to me that gave me back the confidence and really gave me the tools
Yeah.
to activate the greatness that we had inside ourselves, me, my teammates, and the company,
Everyone. Yeah.
um, to in a way that we had never done before,
Yeah.
and that's what got us back on track, got me back on track, and it's for sure.
As a huge proponent of coaches and mentors, I don't know if people realize that a good coach slash mentor can make such a phenomenal difference, not only in your life, but in your business. And I know that for me, I found a coach who was not only a business coach, but a personal and spiritual mentor as well, and particularly around mindset. And it makes a huge difference because you're in your own head and you can't often see what the rest of the world sees, and it takes that external expert or that external person to go, hey, but what are you saying to yourself? Why do you think that? And let's explore why you think that. And for me, I can't ever see a time when I will be without a coach or a mentor, because of the bigger vision that I have for my life. And
Yeah.
it's about that external validation when things are tough, to go, hey, remember back 6 months ago when this was happening? Look at what's happening now. And Mike, that's part of what you're passionate about now, is that growth and that help, and being that person on the outside looking in and going, hey, you're okay, but here's what you can do. That's a great part
Right.
of what you've learnt, isn't it?
It is, and you have you ever heard the saying that you can't read the label from inside the jar?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that can definitely be what it's like, So there's a couple of biases, right? So there's a
Mm,
closeness bias, there's a familiarity bias, and there's a comfort bias.
yes.
All of those are things that almost everybody uh, acquires,
Yeah.
during their time, and breaking through those things, even if intellectually you can wrap your head around it,
Yeah.
uh, just behaviorally or habits or
Yeah.
whatever keep you from maybe making the progress that a coach can help you make, for sure.
And you can't see it, can you, Mike, until someone is working with you and like points it out, and then
Yeah,
helps you work through that. And you don't realize what's blocking you or stopping that success that you so want to see. Um, I have been listening to a girl by the name of Mel Robbins, and just recently, and she was talking about women and guilt, and it never occurred to me that men don't experience guilt in the same way that women do. And it was like an
mm,
epiphany, and I'm like, oh my goodness, so I'm beating myself up about X, Y, and Z. If I was a bloke, I'd just shrug it off. And then I began to observe my son, who's in his 30s, and around that subject of guilt. And I'm like, oh my God, it's just not there. And it's not that he doesn't care, because he's a very caring human being, but he's a bloke, and it just is
mm,
not has not got the same gravity. And I thought, oh wow, so that's something else. And it's that, and then you take that little element or nugget and put it into your business and go, ah. And that's the path, isn't it? Again, it becomes less about
Yeah.
the entrepreneurial journey and more about the growth, wisdom, and knowledge that you get along the way. And then you get to share it with other people so that they can get out of their own valleys and achieve the things that they want to achieve.
Yeah. You're so right, Tony. And you know, even if you can see it, even if you can see it, a lot of times you can't do anything about it because, like I said, your behaviors, your habits, everything is set up
Yes.
to reinforce what you're seeing, and you just can't wrap your head around, okay, I see what I need to be doing, but how do I actually do it?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, and that's, where that outside perspective and, someone who's got the wisdom of having done it,
Yes.
can be super helpful, right? It's okay,
Phenomenal.
you'd be like, hey, you know what? It's normal. It's normal that you are where you are. That's not
Yeah.
abnormal. But we
Yeah.
don't want to be in that normal anymore, right? We
Yeah.
want to be in another normal. So,
That's
yeah.
right. Mike, I'm curious. Obviously, you've been on this path for a long while now, and I'm curious.
Yeah.
And you've worked through a lot of things and gained a lot of insight. What was the point that made you decide to sell the businesses?
Okay. Well, the first business that we had for 22 years, I I made that decision for these reasons. One, uh, a couple of years before, I had the opportunity to buy out my two remaining partners, and that had been a goal
Oh,
for a long time.
wow.
And I did that. We were able to do that, and
Mm,
it was a good outcome for
mm.
everybody. But it did constrain the business a bit because we had to come up
Yes.
with a good deal of money and
Yes.
to do that. And so we weren't able to grow through acquisition or through new locations the way we had been able to
Yeah.
before. So that was giving me a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Um, but I was okay. I was okay with riding that out, I thought. And then a company came along, and they had this vision for starting a new division and having our company be what they call a platform, like the
Uh-huh.
base of the business. And everything about that sounded like a good opportunity for me and for our team. And so uh, I, I thought about it and determined that, if we were able to get a certain amount for the business and they would, commit to certain things for the team, that it would be a better future for everyone if we
Yeah.
were to sell the business. And I still think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that selling that business at that time was the right thing to do, and the company that purchased it is doing very well with it. Many of the
Yay.
people that were on my team are still with
Still.
that company, and they're
Yeah.
doing very well. And I don't know. So I feel like the everything aligned, and
Yeah.
it was the right move.
Yeah. So it just got to that point where it was now's the right time, I know. And so after you'd sold the businesses, then something must have triggered you onto your current path. Do you know what that was?
The current path with the podcast and stuff, or the other businesses that I've gotten involved in.
The other businesses. Did you know intuitively that
Oh,
those were the ones that you wanted to go into? Or was it a little wait and see? Like, I'm curious to know the next evolution of Mike.
well, there were a couple of things. So the sale gave me. I had been investing in other companies before the sale, but the sale gave me a lot more flexibility to
Ah,
do that, Tony. And so
mm,
I began investing in a lot of early stage companies for a number of reasons. The first was selfish, and it's not going to sound like the right reason, but I wanted the education. I wanted,
yes,
these people, these younger entrepreneurs were starting companies that were doing things that I couldn't even imagine. I
Yeah.
couldn't even fathom. And sometimes I couldn't even explain. But, so it was a great, next step in my education as a business person, and just as a member of the world. So that helped me. And then in the waste business, I started another waste business, with a private equity partner. Um, is private equity that what the term used in Australia
Yes.
for
Yes.
like a VC? Okay.
Yeah.
So through a chance meeting, I met these folks who were looking to start a waste business, and my skill set and my connections and my experience were kind of just what they were looking for. And we this time, we built a business so differently than the first time, Tony. The first time was,
Yes.
true startup, bootstrap,
Hard work.
grind, all
Yes.
that stuff.
Yeah.
This time we had the money to go. We made several acquisitions to put a platform, a solid foundation together for the company, and then we put management team in place. We put the systems in place, and we just had really, really good momentum around the
Yeah.
business. And from a timing standpoint, there's a lot more interest in environmental companies than there was when I sold the first business.
Yes.
And we planned to have this business for a long time, but then, about not even 3 years into it, we got, some very significant interest, and we ended up selling the business
Yeah.
for, a really nice outcome. And so, I mean, that one we knew we were starting to sell.
Yes.
That was the goal, started to
Yes.
sell it, but the timing was just very, very much accelerated by
Yeah.
market conditions and, what we'd been able to put together.
Yeah. 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 Mike, I'm curious to know what prompted you to write a book, because for lots of people, the thought of writing a book is a scary thing. For some people, it's a dream that they always want. What was it for you?
Both.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It was a dream, it was something that I'd had as a goal for a long time, Tony. And so I would write, but I never put any structure into my life in order to have a book.
Yes.
So I would write, put it in the full, put it away, write, put it away, write, put it away. And after I sold the first business, I started to think, well, now I should have plenty of opportunity to see this thing kind of all the way through. But still, I didn't do anything in it because I was scared to write it. I was scared that it would be good enough. I was scared that whether my story would be interesting to anyone, and I was scared to tell stuff that I thought made my story what it is, because some of it was embarrassing, some of it was
God, yes.
made me
Cringe.
all of that stuff. And so what got me unstuck for that was I hired a firm that gave me the structure around writing a book. And that's what I needed. So once I had the structure and a little bit of support, I was able to sit down, and I had already written a lot of stuff, as I said, and I was able to, begin putting it in order and begin making sense of it. And then they said, if you're going to write that story, I think there's more to that story than what you've written so far. So they were challenging me, to go deeper and be,
Isn't that a
more,
fun
vulnerable
process?
or whatever.
Yes. Where they challenge you to go and expand on a certain story, and my experience is that you push back and like nobody needs to know that stuff. Like nobody needs to know that stuff. And then they'll come back and say, oh, but what about this and what about this? And you're like, it's almost like pulling teeth. It's quite a painful, but then you write and you give in to that fear and write anyway, and the end result is much more vulnerable and much more for people to connect with you, because again, it's about that connection, isn't it, Mike? So that other people, other humans, know that they're not alone, that what they're feeling and what they're thinking and what they've been through is similar to another human being's experience. But for us that are writing, that's hard, hey?
It's very hard because well, for me at least, I can't speak for anyone else,
Oh
but for
no,
me at least,
for
it was
me it was
just,
too.
yeah, it was, yeah, I would, if I had written the book myself without that prompting, it,
Mm.
and I'm not saying it's a New York Times bestseller or anything, Tony, but it would
But
not have been
it's your
nearly as good
story.
of a story as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
I
it's
should
some.
say not a New York Times bestseller yet. Yeah. Did I say yet? Yes. Yet.
You
Yeah,
added yet at the end. Isn't that everyone's
I did.
dream? Is the New York Times
Yeah.
bestseller? Yeah, that's everyone's dream. Mike, we're getting close to being out of time, but can you tell
Yeah.
the audience some of the key things that you learnt along your entrepreneurial journey? And then I want you to tell people where they can get the book.
Yeah. I'd say one of the things that for me was uh, just a breakthrough uh, when I learned this was that I have to be selfish before I can be selfless.
Yeah.
And my whole up until the time that I realized that, I thought that being selfless and putting everyone else first um, was what a good leader does.
Mm,
And
mm, mm.
and I don't think that's true until the leader has been selfish enough to really know what he or she wants to accomplish
Yes.
and what it's going to look like and
Yes.
why, and answer all of those questions, because
Mm.
once you do that, then you can communicate that. You first
Yeah.
of all, you're convinced of it,
Yes.
and then you can communicate that.
Yeah.
You can communicate that to everyone, and then the what really becomes clear is, what should I be working on and what does the team need to be working on,
Yeah.
instead of I'll work on everything because that's what a good selfless leader does. And I confuse selfless with I'd like to say, yeah, I was selfless, but there was a little bit of hero thing in there, Tony, like, oh,
Yes.
everybody needs me, that's
Yeah.
right, that makes me feel valuable and good, and
Yes. And
just
then you've got to go back and work on that. Oh, but I am valuable without
yeah.
any of that. Yeah. It
Oh,
again, it's the
exactly,
growth.
and that's not easy.
No.
Yeah, you are so right. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Now I'm only going to work on
Oh.
the stuff that's most valuable, right? And then you go, what is most valuable? What should I be doing? Yeah.
It's like I like to describe it as it's like a spider web of you get one thing sorted and then it takes you on this little track, and then you go and get that sorted and it takes you back on this track and back on, and it's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah. It is a journey. Yes. It's a journey. But that's when it gets to be a good journey.
Yes.
It's the grind part of the journey that is the bad part. And like I said, too many of us, we all get there, and too many of us stay there, and then it really
Yes.
starts to mess with you.
Yeah. 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 Mike, where can where can the audience buy your book?
Well, Amazon is probably
The
the
best.
best, global place to buy it. Yes. Owner Shift: How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck.
Great title.
But if you want to know, oh, thank you so much. But if you want to know anything about me and my podcasts or the book, you can get a free chapter of the book at my website,
Absolutely.
and that is www.mikemalatesta, MALATESTA.com.
And for those of you that listening, wherever you are watching this show, those links will be in the information attached to the show, so you don't need to go searching for Mike's website, his podcast, or his book. They'll all be attached to this interview. Mike, what a divine pleasure to talk with you today. I'm so appreciative that you've taken the time to talk to me out of your busy day. It's been a wonderful chat to talk about your evolution, I guess you could say. And I love the fact that sitting in the background is a dump truck that reminds me of my son's first dump truck. I've been looking at it the whole interview and going, my goodness, that looks like his first dump truck. One of the first things I bought him was a dump truck, because his father was working in the coal mining industry and loaded big dump trucks like that were, the ones with the huge big wheels. And yeah. Mike, thank you so much for coming on Everyday Business. I appreciate your time. I can't wait to chat to you again at some stage. And that, my wonderful audience, is your lot for this week.
I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, because if I fail, that means I fail for my entire female nation, I call it.
Is that possible? That was the question for myself. And it is absolutely possible. Is that possible? That was the question for myself. And it is absolutely possible. Is that possible? That was the question for myself.